more difficulties. The geographic distribution was also very serious, where many important products for health are being produced in a geographic concentration. And in the region of the Americas, we also have another situation when we see the question of production. In order to guarantee the multisector reality, comprehensiveness, and coherence in pharmaceutical policies and other health technologies, we cannot only count on the health sector. Today, in our dialogue, we must have institutions from the economic field, trade, world, ministerial representations, industry representations, technology, finance, because the fact is that we're talking about a strategic investment for the countries and for the region. It's not just the health demand, which is important. We have to consider that the work has to be closely coordinated. We have to have science, technology, education, industry, trade, and health all harmonized so that we can guarantee that all sectors are truly involved, public and private sector, civil society, in such a way that we can truly have a strategic production that can consider the true needs of the region and find where the highest vulnerabilities are found and what are the capacities we already have and what are those that must be developed in a short, medium, and long term. We also have, to increase the productive capacity, the need to consider all pillars in the vaccine production: safety, effectiveness, guaranteeing that the regulatory capacity of the country is strengthened. Availability has to be considered. How can we increase and improve the vaccine production in the region? The fair and sustainable prices must be concerned to guarantee the price issues and equity, of course. PAHO, in its history, has 42 years of history at the request of the member states of the region, created a revolving vaccine fund that has ensured that the region is the region in the world where the new vaccines are brought for HPV, for meningococcus, and all the vaccines. The region of the Americas has always been the first region to always implement the new vaccines because the shared procurement process in the region makes it possible for us to negotiate prices for quality vaccines. So the question of equity is also very important, as the director rightly said in her opening words. The platform, amongst the many different positive aspects it has, includes the strengthening of the production capacity as it ensures the possibility of having a more equitable access with real benefit for all countries of Latin America and the Caribbean. As James mentioned, during our executive committee, when the proposal was presented, which will then be sent to the directing council in September, the document of increased production capacity of medication and essential health technologies was brought up, and Mexico made a proposal which was supported by all member countries of the executive committee, requesting that the director promote, with the participation of national health authorities, the generation of a regional platform for discussion of the different opportunities for the essential health technologies and medications. That's why we're launching this product today. It is to comply with the request of the executive committee, establishing a platform that can in fact help evaluate all the initiatives we have in the region to find the complementarity, the partnerships amongst the countries, and assistance so that production is feasible, sustainable, and truly benefit all countries of Latin America and the Caribbean. In the resolution of the document that will be discussed in the Directing Council, we have three strategic lines of action. First, to establish coherence in the intersectorial action and health governance, science, technology, and industry. Strengthen the research, development, production, and logistics capacity, and strengthening regional and sub-regional cooperation and strategic partnerships. The regional platform, which is being launched today, is with the objective of generating that space of discussion, exchange of experiences, and identify concrete opportunities that are feasible for regional cooperation with harmonization of concrete initiatives to increase the production capacity of medicines and other essential health technologies, which can contribute to equitable access to these products for all member countries. We have 3 lines of action which are being proposed to contribute to a greater understanding of the regional context through the dissemination of national and international initiatives, policies, and experiences, share lessons learned, and discuss challenges, opportunities, and policy options, and articulate cooperation among participants, favoring initiatives of sub-regional and regional scope. We know that currently there are many countries that are seeking alternatives to increase their own national capacity, and this is important and very positive. In fact, it's always important to clearly review things so that every country can have an increased capacity, and through the platform, make it possible to use complementarity between the different initiatives with networking and partnerships, making the more rapid development of vaccines and essential health technologies for the region. On April 16th, we had with our colleagues from Geneva, from WHO, the launching of the so-called expressions of interest for Latin America and the Caribbean, with more than 300 people participating in that call, with a little more than 30 proposals of interest, which are now being reviewed and hopefully will be, the final result will be disseminated during the Directing Council on the 21st of September. Today, we had another calling expressing interest where countries, private and public producers and public and private partnerships can respond to an expression of interest to contribute to the value chain and the supply of reagents for the sustainable production of the RNA messenger vaccines for COVID-19 in the Americas. So public or private medication, vaccine, or pharmacological substance or raw material producers can participate in this call, presenting proposals for the production of these products, which are essential for the RNA messenger vaccines. So this is a call to see how we can strengthen this production so that it can be done in a sustainable manner in the region. And to end, I believe that I am going to refer to what our director has called the Bureau of Attention. Latin America and the Caribbean already has the expertise and capacity to develop and produce vaccines. So it is very important for us to take advantage of this platform and use the support that can be obtained from the different countries, and based on the existing capacity, develop more capacity so that all the countries of the region can in fact benefit from expanded access to COVID-19 vaccines as well as to essential medications for health. Thank you very much. James, back to you. Thank you very much, Jarvas, for this presentation of the platform.
This morning we've also organized 2 panel discussions around many of the issues that Dr. Barbosa has raised in his presentation. And we'd like to move straight into the first of these panel discussions. Dr. Anelia Porras, the Unit Chief of Medicines and Health Technologies at PAHO, will moderate the first of these panels around the global context and some of the initiatives in development and manufacturing of vaccines, medicines, and other health technologies. Over to you, Anelia.
Thank you, James, and good morning, everybody. It's my honor and my pleasure to be moderating the first panel. We have a slight change of the panel composition, though. So I have the honor of having today with me discussing this important subject, Dr. Daniel Salas, our Minister of Health of Costa Rica, Anabel Gonzalez, the Deputy Director General from WTO, the World Trade Organization, and the Chief Scientist from the World Health Organization, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan. Unfortunately, due to some last-minute issues, Dr. Richard Hatchet from CEPI has not yet been able to connect. So we hope he will be connected, but if not, we'll miss him dearly. Entonces, and again, this panel will be a little bit eclectic in Spanish and English, so bear with us. You have interpretation available into 4 languages, as James mentioned before. Dr. Salas, qué gusto tenerlo con nosotros.
Dr. Salas, it's a real pleasure to have you with us. Let me welcome you again. And it's important that we begin with you because you are the Minister of Health that we have in this meeting. The question we have for you has to do with the importance in these public-private initiatives that might be multisectoral and with so many players involved. How important is it for the health sector to act as the guide and to mediate the transfer of knowledge and to be facilitator in these initiatives? And tell us a little bit about the regional and global context as you see it for the development of vaccines today and other health technologies. Please go ahead, Dr. Salas. Greetings to all present at this meeting, to Dr. Carissa Etienne, Dr. Barbosa, and everyone else. What we have seen in this pandemic is that we are living a juncture in which we need to make decisions in order to move forward as humanity from a point of view of being humane and of humanity. When we see what the pandemic has caused, the major chaos in health sectors, with thousands of deaths daily, where there has been a social and economic repercussion that has been devastating in many countries. And when we see that there are possibilities, medicines, vaccines that enable countries, enable the world to move forward, then I think it's important that we question ourselves and draw up an inventory of what we have and what can be achieved through the transfer of technology that is so important, so necessary to be able to solve the problems caused by the pandemic. I do believe that a successful transfer of technology is, of course, a matter of social and humanitarian responsibility, but we need to ensure that whatever is transferred be in high quality, that it be a win-win situation, because it is not a matter of sacrificing innovation nor the investments made in order to reach these innovations. But we need to understand that ultimately, if we join efforts, if we have a joint vision and don't think about gains for the few, but rather the gain for the world, because as I said, this pandemic has weakened economies and societies, has undermined employment options, has caused chronic diseases, mental diseases, and we're only going to see the magnitude of these after COVID. Plus, we have the long-haul COVID. These are challenges. We have an opportunity to get together to understand that this pandemic is something that can recur in the future, can be repeated. We need to build the necessary platforms now that will allow us to pull through in a more fast and effective manner. There's another topic that I'm very concerned about. It might not be directly linked, but perhaps yes in the future. It's the development of biotechnological and medicines. I know there's a lot of innovation and complexity, but the prices for these medicines are so high that they are not really affordable for many countries. And I think within this possibility of technology transfer, we need to see how to achieve sustainability and access devoid of polarization in the world between effective access to medicines, health opportunities, and the non-effective access. This being said, what I'd like to now do is thank the Pan American Health Organization and the World Health Organization that have adopted these strategies and were leaders in exploring these possibilities, launching them, to do it as a region and to see how to collaborate in this global contribution. And we need to persevere. If we truly unite, combating a joint enemy, the enemy in this case being virus that has been fatal for the entire world, we needed to see this as a large international community. We have a joint enemy. We need to be fast to do it better. And if we can truly come forward with solidarity, we will be able to have a humanitarian view. Thank you very much, Minister.
You're the chief scientist of the World Health Organizations, and since the beginning, actually, you were the first chief scientist designated by WHO. And from the beginning, you've been a leading figure within the ACT Accelerator and the facilitation of the activities among partners within the Accelerator. So could you tell us a little bit of the global context? What's ACT-A doing to facilitate the development and manufacture of these essential technologies that the Minister Salas was referring to? What are some of the main activities, and how do you see this global context also coming down to our regional, to our region and the interactions at that level? Soumya, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Analia. And I think Dr. Etienne and Dr. Barbosa really laid out the background very well on exact, and the minister just spoke about also the challenges and issues on why we're all now focusing on local production. So as you know, the ACT Accelerator was set up really with a vision of the Director General in order to both accelerate the development of new tools, that's drugs, diagnostics, and vaccines, but also, very importantly, to ensure equitable access once those tools are developed, because we know from history that this doesn't happen by itself. So the ACT Accelerator brought together all the major global agencies, the health agencies, but also the banks, World Bank and IMF has joined. And in fact, Dr. Ngozi, who's now the Director General of the WTO, was the first co-chair of the ACT Council. The agencies apart from WHO are Gavi, CEPI, UNITAID, the Global Fund, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Wellcome Trust, UNITAID, FIND. And then we have the three pillars: the diagnostics pillar, the therapeutics pillar, and the vaccines pillar. All have the same goals: accelerate the development as well as provide equitable access. And then there are cross-cutting areas of work like the health systems pillar, which obviously is very important, because without the backbone of the health systems being strong, none of these new tools can be appropriately used. I have been most involved in the COVAX, that is the vaccines pillar of the ACT Accelerator, which WHO, Gavi, and CEPI with UNICEF are the agencies that have been working on it, with each of us having our own defined responsibilities. We realized fairly, towards the end of last year, that first when we started, we didn't know that we would be having these so many safe and effective vaccines. So initially, our focus was on the facilitation and coordination of the development of as many vaccines as possible, providing support to developers, small biotech companies, countries, researchers, developing the target product profile, setting the benchmarks. But once it became clear that there could be effective vaccines developed, then the issue of supplies. And the COVAX was set up as the main delivery mechanism for global equitable access. to serve both high income and low and middle income countries, everyone. That was really the vision for COVAX. And people pay, those who can afford to pay, the self-financing countries, and those, the 92 AMC countries, would get it from donor funding. Now, our major challenge has been supplies into COVAX. And the reasons for this have been that, I think everyone knows the reasons, but the limited supplies of vaccines have mainly gone to high-income countries. And today, if we look at the where the 5 billion doses of vaccines have been delivered, the majority of them have been in the high and upper middle income countries. And as yet, the low income countries have achieved less than 2% coverage of the population. So we started thinking about how do we increase supplies, and also how do we build regional health security for the future. And this is, I think, what exactly we're discussing today. And one of the things that became clear was that there are new technologies now that have been proven during this pandemic. And they have now proof of principle now. The first mRNA proof of principle is with COVID. Similarly, the adenoviral vector vaccines, they have been tried for other diseases, but not at the scale at which they have been used for COVID, with a demonstrated safety and efficacy. So clearly there are opportunities now to build on these new platforms, these innovative platforms. But the issue is that the production is concentrated in a limited number of countries, and this then impacts the distribution. So this is why we went ahead and put out a call for the establishment of an mRNA technology transfer hub, because we believe that a multilateral tech transfer hub, which brings the best technologies and makes it available to all countries, whoever's interested, to come and learn and go back and set up manufacturing in their own countries. Now, I think from what Dr. Etienne and Dr. Barbosa were saying, everyone understands that not every country can become or should become a producer of vaccines, but a regional approach where there is clear discussion and agreement on which countries will produce vaccines and how they will be shared, how they will be procured, who's going to produce the raw materials. And it's very, really positive to see the call for the production of the raw materials, because one of the things that is impacting the scale up of supplies is the limitation in raw materials, particularly for mRNA vaccines, are limited suppliers. I just want to say a word about what CEPI is doing as well, because Dr. Hatchet has not been able to join us, I understand. And this
he just joined.
He did, okay. So he will then talk about the supplies and the upstream work and the marketplace that they have developed. But I can stop here, Analia, and take questions later.
Thank you, Soumya. So clear. And I think you brought up another very important subject that leads us to our next speaker, DDG Anabel Gonzalez from World Trade Organization. We know that during the pandemic, trade restrictions had a big impact in accessing health technology. So DDG, what are the lessons learned from the pandemic in terms of the impact of trade and the main aspect that we need to revise so we are better prepared for the next pandemic? And also, how do you see initiatives such as decentralization of geographical decentralization of production and the platform and interregional cooperation that we are talking about today can help, and how do trade and organizations such as the WTO can help us lead to a future where everybody has access of these health technologies when we are able to produce this? The floor is yours, DDG.
Muchas gracias, Analia, y muchas gracias por esta invitación.
Thank you very much, Analia, and thank you very much for the invitation, and congratulations to the Pan American Health Organization for launching this regional platform that seeks to expand the production capacity for vaccines and other health technologies related to COVID-19 in the region. I'm now going to switch to English for my comments.
A positive force during the pandemic by enabling access to much needed medical supplies around the world. Even if the value of global merchandise trade shrank by more than 7% in 2020, trading medical supplies increased by 16% and by 50% for personal protective equipment. Trade has been a critical tool in the fight against the pandemic, but more can and should be done. The vast majority of people in the developing world have not been fully vaccinated. And we've heard from Dr. Etienne that in Latin America and the Caribbean, as of early August, it's about 1 in 5 people who have been fully vaccinated. So without urgent action to boost the supply of COVID-19 vaccines, the world will not be able to bring the pandemic under control. Regional diversification of production can play an important role in facilitating vaccine equity. Now, to reach more people in all countries with increased manufacturing, 2 things need to happen. First, more international trade in critical vaccine inputs. Without access to the inputs, the additional doses will not be produced. The WTO, working in collaboration with other organizations, has identified an indicative list of 83 critical inputs for manufacturing COVID-19 vaccines. And these inputs cannot be produced all in one place. And second, the movement of vaccines through international trade channels must also grow. Today, close to 30 economies are projected to produce COVID-19 vaccines by the end of 2021, with 16 of those economies being outside the G20. So everything must be done to ensure that the cross-border movement of vaccines and the inputs necessary to produce them are as smooth as possible. And here is where the WTO comes in. The WTO, working in collaboration with other international organizations, including WHO, governments, and stakeholders, can support efforts to ramp up production and pump it out to the rest of the world. By identifying and overcoming bottlenecks in the vaccine and input supply chains and other critical technologies, the WTO can help enhance predictability and transparency and to keep supply chains running. So actions to facilitate vaccine equity include, but are not limited, supporting efforts to identify and reduce export restrictions and to put trade facilitating measures in place, fostering cooperation and partnerships, including through voluntary licensing and technology transfer, as well as the effective implementation and use of policy options available in the WTO system, monitoring trade policies and ensuring transparency, contributing to building the capacity of regulatory authorities that need to ensure efficiency, quality, and efficacy, and safety, of course, of vaccines and other medical products, and promoting the collection of granular trade data in support of facilitating vaccine manufacturing and supply chains. With that, let me stop here, and I'll be glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, DDG. And it's a great leeway again into our final panelist, Dr. Richard Hatchet. Dr. Hatchet is the Chief Executive Officer of the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, or CEPI, a leading player in the development of vaccines and early access to COVID vaccines through the Act 8 Accelerator. Dr. Hatchet, such a pleasure to have you here. And I wonder if you can tell us a little bit from the CEPI perspective and all the work that you have done, that the main challenges and opportunities faced by a regional approach that, like the one we are talking about today and the one DDG Gonzalez and Dr. Swaminathan were referring to, how we can ensure its success. What are some of the major challenges for the supply and the opportunities that we have to explore, and how are organizations like CEPI being able to help some of our regional development? The floor is yours, Dr. Hatchet.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Very well.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Annalie, and thank you to the Pan American Health Organization for the invitation. I'm sorry there was a time mix-up on my schedule, and I had this starting an hour later, so I apologize for my not showing up on time. I just want to start by saying that since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, global efforts to expand vaccine development and manufacturing have been something that's truly extraordinary. Less than 18 months after the identification of the new virus, the world has already administered over 5 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines worldwide. The entire global production of all vaccines globally in 2019 has been estimated to be somewhere between 3.5 and 5.5 billion doses. So essentially, the world has been able to administer so far a number of doses equivalent to its entire global production of all vaccines in previous years. That's truly extraordinary. But obviously, we haven't achieved equitable access, and we've identified many challenges that we need to overcome. Let me just talk about a few of these and then talk about some of the things that will be necessary to produce a globally decentralized or regional vaccine manufacturing capability. Some of the most immediate hurdles that vaccine manufacturers have encountered in scaling up have been the availability of input supplies, and we have worked through a number of mechanisms to try to alleviate those supplies. And maybe in the question and answer period, I can talk a little bit more about our supply chain work. In the midterm, in terms of thinking about expanding manufacturing capacity, there are a number of issues, particularly related to the availability of highly skilled manufacturing workers and regulatory workforce in many countries where these capacities are underdeveloped. In the longer term, as we think about scaling up manufacturing, we need to think about sustainability of any capacity that we create beyond COVID-19, and a great deal of additional capacity obviously has already been brought online, and we need to think about how that capacity will be rationalized over time. In terms of the types of things that we will need in place to support efforts to decentralize or regionalize vaccine manufacturing capability going forward, I think first and foremost, one of the biggest deficits that we encountered in 2020 was financing, given the large capital investments that are required to stand up vaccine manufacturing. And that financing, certainly in an emergency, needs to be coordinated and it needs to be risk tolerant. Vaccine manufacturing capacity, if it's going to respond to the needs of a pandemic, needs to be substantial. We need to be able to scale up vaccine manufacturing very, very rapidly. CEPI recently performed a survey to assess manufacturing capacity and capacity ambitions in lower and middle income countries. The survey data are available, and there was strong participation in the PAHO region. These will be discussed in the framework of regional workshops, which will be led by CEPI, PAHO, and other organizations, and we certainly anticipate strong participation from the PAHO region and the LATAM region. In terms of the workforce, one key issue in many countries, obviously, is the lack of sufficiently trained vaccine manufacturing personnel skilled in the discipline of quality, and as I said, the regulatory environment. Vaccine manufacturing requires intense collaboration between manufacturers and regulators, and if we're going to stand up regional capacity, we need to make significant investments in regulatory capacity, both regionally and in specific countries. Finally, I think the last issue, an issue that many people have been very concerned about during the pandemic, is access to technology, particularly to the most modern and effective vaccination and vaccine manufacturing technologies. Recombinant protein-based manufacturing is now established globally, but the manufacturing of mRNA-based vaccines, which have proved to be extremely effective, as everyone knows, and viral vectors is still largely limited to high-income countries. And we need to support the transfer of these technologies and know-how to manufacturers in in regions that are currently underserved. I'll stop there and happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hatchet, and thank you to all the panelists. So we are going to close the panel now and then move on to the next panel. And I invite attendees and participants to put questions in the chat. So we'll pass, if we have time, some of the questions to the end of the session. But I think we had the privilege through this extremely interesting panel to hear the regional but also the global context and how many organizations are working together in an unprecedented collaboration and in an unprecedented speed to bring these technologies to our region. But as we said, a lot has to be done. PAHO is trying to push and help at this effort through the regional platform that we are launching today. And I now pass the word to James Fitzgerald to discuss with a regional panel how this can actually accelerate production and access to these health technologies in the region. So James, over to you.
So thanks very much, Analia, and a special thanks to all the participants in the panel that you just moderated. So what I'd like to do in this panel discussion is really take some of those elements and see how we contextualize them within the context of the Americas, how some of the issues that have been raised within a much more global context specifically impact some of the initiatives and projects that are ongoing in the region. I'm really happy to have a very distinguished panel here to moderate this morning. We have the Minister of Science and Technology and Knowledge and Innovation, Minister Andrés Couve from Chile with us. We have the Vice Minister of Knowledge and Economy, Doctora Maria Apolito. We have the President of the Oswaldo Cruz Foundation, Doctora Nicia Trindade Lima. And we have William or Bill Savidoff, who is the Principal Health Specialist at the Inter-American Development Bank. And of course, we have Alberto Arenas, who is the Director of the Division for Social Development at CIPAL. So let me begin with Minister Couve. Minister, it's a pleasure to have you here this morning. Chile announced recently some important investments for the establishment of a production facility for vaccines against COVID-19, commencing with a fill and finish operation. From this perspective of a country like Chile, what is, in your opinion, the importance of the public-private partnerships that you have developed to ensure that such development projects are feasible? And how do you see these research and development initiatives developing further in Chile, but within a broader regional context?
Muchísimas gracias, James.
Thank you very much, James.
Quisiera primero saludarlos.
Let me begin by greeting everyone who have joined us for this panel today, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity I've been given to participate on this panel that looks at something so important. Let me congratulate also the Pan American Health Organization for the initiative for organizing this panel to give greater visibility to the initiative. We're obviously talking about the relevance of having installed capacity to tackle a future health emergency, not only this one, but any that may occur in the future that we cannot foresee. We are doing it because I believe all of us here are convinced that we need more independence, autonomy than what we have seen during the COVID-19 pandemic. So we do have a goal that is this greater autonomy, but we also believe that this needs to be assessed with a serious look at feasibility. Now, I want to raise a few points now, and these have to do with terrain that is unknown to us and brought about by the pandemic. We need to constantly revise the lessons because we continue learning as we are immunizing the population in a very demanding pandemic. At the same time, we're working on this initiative, and that is quite something very new. Let me respond to James' question about the importance of
empezado a
public-private
trabajar
collaboration.
con
We have
una
started
sigla
working
que inventamos
with
que le
an
llamamos
acronym that
I+D+M,
we have called
investigación y desarrollo y manufactura,
R&D
haciendo un
plus
símil de lo que es la
M,
investigación y
which is
desarrollo e
research and
innovación, por
development
ejemplo, que
plus
se le llama
manufacturing.
la I+D+I.
So that's what
Aquí
we're
hemos hablado
calling
de
it with the
I+D+M.
Spanish
¿Y cómo deben
acronym.
participar entonces el sector
And
público
how should the
y el
public
sector
and
privado?
private sector
Lo primero
participate in
es
this
que
effort? Well,
ya en
first,
este enunciado de
in
I+D+M
this
tenemos dos componentes, digamos, uno que es
R&D plus
investigación y
M, we
desarrollo y el
have
otro
two
que es
components.
manufactura.
One is
¿Y dónde
research
puede
and development,
aportar
and the other
el
is
sector público?
manufacturing.
¿Dónde
And what is
aporta
the
el
public
Estado?
sector
Y lo que hemos
contribution? What
visto
can the
es
state
que
do?
aporta
What we have
principalmente
seen that is that
financiando
essentially
investigación
it provides
científica básica,
financing for basic
investigación científica
scientific
que se
research.
financia por largos periodos
It
con
is
programas
financed
continuos
over
y que van
long
acompañadas
periods and
también
continuous
de
programs, and they're
inversión,
also
de gasto
supported
público
by
en
investment and
infraestructura,
public
en
spending on
equipamiento
infrastructure,
y
on
además
equipment,
desde el
and
sector público
additionally from the
creando las
public
condiciones
sector,
propicias a
creating
través
the
de
right
una regulación
conditions
adecuada,
through appropriate
incentivos,
regulations,
transparencia de los
incentives,
mercados y algo que hemos
transparency
visto
in
que
the
es
markets,
absolutamente clave,
and
donde el
something that
Estado
we
tiene
have
un
seen
rol
it is
vital,
crucial where the
es
state plays an
en la
important
información,
role, and that
es
is
en la
information.
transparencia y en la
So it's
disponibilización de la
transformation
información para
and
tomar
availability of
decisiones
information for
respecto, por
decision
ejemplo,
making,
a un programa
for
de vacunación.
instance, having
Entonces,
to
el
do with a
Estado, el
vaccine
sector
program.
público,
So the state,
creemos
the
que tiene
public
un rol
sector, we
absolutamente
believe plays a
fundamental en un
crucial
proceso como el que estamos
role
analizando
in
hoy
a
día.
process such as the one that
Pero
we are today
también hemos
discussing.
visto, y aquí se
At the
mencionó
same time, we
previamente
have
por
seen, and
los
we have also
volúmenes
heard
de
about this,
capital
given the
requerido, por
volume of
los
capital
volúmenes de dosis que se
required
generan
because of the
producir,
volume of
aquí también el
doses
sector
that need
privado
to be
es
produced.
absolutamente
The private
clave
sector is
en el
also
aspecto
very
de
important when
manufactura,
it comes
desarrollo
to
tecnológico,
manufacturing,
inversión, estas son
technological
decisiones
development,
finalmente del
and
mercado,
investment, because
que
these
se
are market
balanceen entonces
decisions,
con los
and there
incentivos
needs
del
to be a
Estado. Por lo
trade-off
tanto,
with state
creemos que la
incentives.
I+D y
So
manufactura
we think that the
realmente
R&D
representa una
plus
alianza
manufacture
entre el
is
sector
truly
público que
a
tiene
partnership
algunas tareas
between the
muy
public
claras y
sector that has
concretas
some
y
clear
un sector
concrete
privado que
tasks to do,
tiene
and a
también a su
private
cargo
sector that also
tareas muy
is
concretas
responsible for some
dados
very
los tamaños
specific things,
de
given
los
the
mercados,
sizes of
dado también el
markets
tamaño de la inversión.
and also the size
Pero
of
hemos visto
investment.
otra cosa
But we've
que
seen
es
something
absolutamente
else, which is
fundamental también,
fundamental as
que
well,
tiene que ver con
which has to
la
do with
alianza
the
no solamente
not
público-privada,
only
sino que
public-private
también la
partnership, but
alianza
with the
con la academia,
partnership with
con la
academia,
investigación, con los
investigation,
innovadores, con los
innovators,
emprendedores.
entrepreneurs.
Y yo creo que durante
And I think
esta
that
pandemia
during this
hemos sido
pandemic, we
testigos del
have
alto
witnessed
valor
the
de
very
este tipo
important
de alianzas que no solamente son
importance of these
público-privadas,
partnerships
sino
that
que
are not
también
only just
privadas con
public-private,
la
but they're
academia.
private with
Basta ver el
It's
nombre
suffice to see the
de
name
algunas de las
of
principales vacunas que
some
se están
of the
aplicando
main
hoy día en el
vaccines that are
mundo,
being
que
applied
es
in the world.
Oxford
Oxford
AstraZeneca. Es una
AstraZeneca.
universidad
It's a
con
university
una gran
with a
farmacéutica,
large
Janssen y
pharmaceutical company,
Johnson,
Janssen
Pfizer
and
con
Johnson
BioNTech.
Johnson, Pfizer is there.
Tenemos esta
And so we
combinación
have a combination
que genera
which
entonces un producto
generates a
que
product
tiene
that
innovación, pero que
is
permite el
innovative
acceso a
but
mercados. Y
allows
eso que creo que es
access to markets. And
absolutamente
that is what I
clave de
think is
considerar
absolutely
cuando uno
key
analiza
and should be
cómo
considered
deben
when we analyze
configurarse
how
estos
to
hubs regionales.
configure these
Estado,
regional
privado
hubs, the
y
private,
academia.
state, and
Y cuando hablo de
academia.
academia,
And when I speak of
realmente de lo que
academia, I'm
estamos
actually
hablando es de un
speaking
ecosistema
of an
de investigación y
ecosystem
desarrollo,
of
pero también de
R&D
innovación
as
y
well as
emprendimiento
innovation
que
and
nutren
entrepreneurship, which
entonces con
feed
nuevo conocimiento
into
y con transferencia de
these with new
conocimiento
knowledge, with transfer of
esta
technology
iniciativa.
into these
Entonces,
initiatives.
eso con respecto a la
So
colaboración
that's
público-privada y
insofar as
muy
the public-private
brevemente, ¿qué
cooperation.
es lo que
And very
nosotros
briefly,
creemos a partir
what
de la
do
enseñanza
we
que debe
think from what
considerar
we've learned
un proyecto
should
de
be considered
manufactura
in
o
a
un hub
manufacturing
regional
product
en
or in
América
a
Latina?
regional hub in Latin America?
Lo primero
Well, the
es que ya se ha
first is
mencionado,
that, as was mentioned,
este
this
esfuerzo se
effort
trata de insertarse
must
en
be
cadenas globales.
placed
La
into
industria de
global
vacunas hoy
chains. The
día es una
vaccine industry
industria
today
muy
is
sofisticada,
a very
no
sophisticated
solamente
one,
por las
not
capacidades
only because
complementarias que
of
necesita en
its
cuanto a I+D,
complementary capacities
sino
it
que
requires in
también
R&D, it
tecnológicamente
also
es muy
requires
sofisticada.
a lot
Necesita
of
cadenas de
sophistication
suministro de
technologically. It
insumos
needs
que son complejas,
inputs and
necesita logística, necesita mercados. Por lo tanto,
distribution distribution chains and markets. So to think that the production can take place from the beginning, and when we talk about the beginning, we talk about R&D, to the very end, which is the supply, and in the whole chain, to take
creemos que
place
no
in a
es
single
realista
place,
en
we
los
think is
mercados globales hoy
unrealistic
día,
in the
y
global
menos
markets of
aún
today, and much
en los
less
países en vías
in
de
the
desarrollo. Por lo tanto,
countries,
realmente
in the
la
developed
pregunta
countries.
es
So the
cómo
question
un
we
hub
ask ourselves
regional
is, how
se
can
inserta
we
en una cadena
regionally
global de valor que
find
nos
a global
permite
value
tener
change where
cierta
we can
autonomía
actually
en
have a
suministro a
certain
los
amount of
países de la región.
autonomy
Esa
for the
es una
supply of the
reflexión.
countries of the region?
Y
That's
la
just a thought.
segunda
My
tiene que
second
ver
thought
con
is
el valor
related to
también
the
de
value as well
tener
of
diversas
having
opciones.
diverse
Nosotros
options.
estamos analizando
We
acá la opción
are
de tener un hub
analyzing here the
regional
option of
con
having a
vacunas de
regional hub
mRNA y está muy bien.
for the
Pero hemos
vaccines,
visto
the
cómo las
RNA
múltiples
vaccines,
plataformas
fine. But we've
solucionan
seen that the
problemas que
many
son muy
platforms can
diversos en
solve
la
very
región.
diverse
De
problems that we have in the
acceso,
region. Access,
vacunas, por ejemplo, que son de
vaccines
una
that
dosis,
are
han
of a single dose
facilitado el
has
acceso a personas
made
que tienen
access
dificultad
easier for
para
those who have
desplazarse hacia
difficulties
los
in
centros de
going
vacunación,
to the
en
vaccination
distribución de
centers,
logística por
the
las cadenas de frío,
logistics and distribution because of the
etc.
cold
Por lo
chains and
tanto,
things like that.
también la
So
diversificación de
the
opciones ha
diversity of
demostrado en esta
options
pandemia
in
ser
this
un
pandemic
activo
has
muy
shown to be a
valioso
very
y que
valuable
creemos que
asset,
debemos
which we believe
considerar al
must be
momento de
taken
pensar
into
en un hub
consideration when
regional
thinking of a
para
regional hub
América Latina y
for
el
Latin
mundo.
America.
Y esto
And
obviamente
obviously
también
this
sirve para equiparar
also
el
serves
poder de
to
negociación con
compare
múltiples productores.
the
En
negotiation
Chile
power with many producers. In
estamos
Chile,
abriéndonos
we
para
are
atraer
opening up to
inversión
attract
extranjera y
foreign
justamente
investment
en una colaboración
in cooperation
público-privada y la academia.
in a
¿Y
public,
cómo lo
private,
estamos
and
haciendo?
academia
Estamos
cooperation.
participando
And
en
the way we're doing
instancias
it is by
multilaterales como
participating with
esta, que son
multilateral
absolutamente
instances like this,
fundamentales,
which
no
are
solamente para
absolutely
el
fundamental,
suministro,
not only for the
sino que
supply,
también para lo que hemos
but for what
conversado aquí de
we've
acceso
said of
igualitario, por ejemplo, a las
access
vacunas
or
o
equal
de que
access
tengan
to the
acceso
vaccines
aquellas poblaciones
and
más
access for
vulnerables.
those most
Pero
vulnerable.
también estamos
And
acompañando
also,
iniciativas que
we
surgen
are
a
supporting
partir
other
de
initiatives that are
colaboraciones
arising from different types of
preexistentes entre
cooperation
la
that were
academia
there
y
before between
laboratorios
academia
de desarrollo de
and
vacunas. Y para poner
vaccine
un ejemplo
development
muy
laboratories. To
concreto,
give you a very
estamos
concrete
siguiendo muy
example,
de
we are
cerca y
very
apoyando como
closely
gobierno,
following and
no
supporting
solamente del Ministerio de
not
Ciencia, también
only
el Ministerio
from
de
the
Economía,
Ministry of
también el
Finance, but
Ministerio de Bienes
the
Nacionales, el
Ministry of
Ministerio de Salud,
Capital Goods
también
and
la
Health and
Cancillería, la
Finance,
relación que se ha
the Ministry of Foreign
establecido entre
Affairs, a
Sinovac y
relationship
la
between
Pontificia
Sinovac
Universidad Católica,
and the
que ha
Pontificia
culminado en un acuerdo
Universidad
de
Católica,
instalar
which
una
completed an
planta de
agreement of setting up
manufactura,
a
en particular de fill
manufacturing
and
plant
finish en Chile, con
in
además
Chile
un centro
with
de investigación y desarrollo en el norte del
R&D
país.
center in
Y
the
estamos
north of the
trabajando
country. And
con otras
we're working with
instancias, con otras
other
reparticiones
groups and
públicas, como el
other
Ministerio
centers
de
like the
Economía, como
Ministry of the
una agencia del
Economy
Ministerio
and a
que
ministry of
se
the
encarga de
agency
atraer
which is in
inversión
charge of
extranjera
attracting foreign
para
investment
detectar
to
y
detect
atraer
and
diferentes
attract
capacidades de
different
toda esta cadena de I+D y
capacities of the whole
manufactura para
chain of the R&D and M
insertarla
to
en Chile y
insert it
así
into Chile
nosotros participar de una cadena
so that we can
global
participate in a global
de
chain
valor en términos de producción
in
de
terms of
vacunas.
vaccine production.
Yo quiero solamente
And I'll
cerrar
end
mencionando
simply
que
mentioning
además
that
nos parece
we
fundamental que el
believe
tema que estamos
that the
analizando
topic
no es
we are
solamente
analyzing
una cuestión de
must not
suministro.
only be considered
Lo
from
que
the point
hemos
of view
visto
of supply.
en el mundo
What we've
es
seen
que
in the
en
world
parte
is that
depende del suministro,
yes,
pero
part
esta
depends
distribución
on supply,
equitativa
but
no
the
es
equitable
solamente
distribution
suministro,
is
sino
only
que
a question,
también
is not only a
son las
question of supply,
capacidades
it's
instaladas
also a
en
question
cada
of
país
the installed
para una
capacities
rápida
in the
y
different countries
efectiva
for
vacunación.
rapid and
Y ahí
effective
tenemos que
vaccinations.
pensar en
And there
suministro,
we have to
pero
think of
también tenemos que
supply
pensar
as well
en
as
compartir buenas
of
prácticas, en
sharing good
compartir
practices,
experiencias, en
sharing
transferir
experiences, and
conocimiento
transfer
de cómo
knowledge
entonces los
of
países se preparan con las
how the
capacidades
countries
para
can
que, teniendo acceso a
prepare
las
so that
vacunas, pueda
once they have
implementarse el
access to the
proceso de
vaccine, they
vacunación
can
con la
implement the
rapidez que
vaccination
requieren hoy día
process
estas
with the speed
emergencias
of these
sanitarias.
emergencies
Quedamos entonces
today.
muy
So
atentos a
we're
seguir
going to watch
esta
closely and we'll
discusión que
follow
nos
this
prepara como
discussion very
región
closely
para
because we
enfrentar
are preparing
futuras
as a region for
emergencias que hoy día
future health
ciertamente son
emergencies, which we
desconocidas y
know
quiero agradecer
will
nuevamente a
come
James
sometime
por
in
la
the future. And
invitación
once again,
y
thank you,
mostrarnos
James, for the
disponibles para
invitation.
continuar
And
con este proceso
we're
de
willing to
lanzamiento de esta
continue
iniciativa.
in this
Muchísimas
process
gracias.
of the launching of this initiative. Thank you very much.
Congratulations to you and Chile for the important advances that have been made in this area and the vision that you've presented here this morning. With that vision, I'd like to move now to Vice Minister Apolito in Argentina, Vice Minister of Knowledge Economy in Argentina. We've heard from Minister Cure of the importance of research and development and manufacturing. And there we have the issue of translation research. Building on the necessary capacities that we've heard are so important, and including the investments that are required. The public sector in Argentina has invested heavily to accelerate research, development, and production of vaccines. and other health technologies during this pandemic. If you could tell us, Vice Minister, what actions are being implemented so that the investments and other public incentives that Argentina has rolled out aimed at the development and production of vaccines and medicines, how will these investments and incentives translate into improvements and expanded access within Argentina?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to all of you, and thank you very much to the organizers for allowing us to be part of this initiative, which we realize is fundamental for the development of the region, because I believe that if there's one thing we've learned from this pandemic is precisely that the region has capacity and has a strong willingness to cooperate. From our point of view, we've made very significant efforts in the state, financing several initiatives. We've had diagnostic test developments locally based on different technologies. In fact, we've developed columns and reagents for the PCRs, masking, special masks, and using the silver nanoparticles, and development of special apps for the circulation control and for controlling social distancing, generating online consultation with the physicians, special developments for COVID, which are still in a study phase right now, like the hyperimmune serum. We've reinforced with soft credits the productive capacity of the 3 Argentinian companies that produce respirators. In fact, in Argentina, we barely had to import the ventilators because we had a strong industry of medical technologies. All this effort has been made based on credits at subsidized rates, subsidized by the state itself, and the results have been very good. I would particularly like to stop and comment on what's being done currently with the vaccines and how we see a solution against COVID-19 as something which can and must be a way to make access to this mechanism equitable for the population as a whole. What we see is that the question of the vaccine is not a problem of scientific or technological or research and development problem. It's more a question of coordination and complementation of productive capacity to achieve the necessary scale to allow the region to have access to these vaccines. What I mean with this is that we have to release the patents and transfer technology, which is part of the problem, but it is not going to solve the question of massive access and the access required so that all our region can be immunized. Currently, for Argentina, it is critical for us to achieve this complementarity within our country and with the region. We have a survey done with several biotechnology companies. In Argentina, we're very strong in this field, and we have about 200 biotechnology companies, 50,000 formal employments, 3,500 R&D employments in the area, and 3 million students in higher education that are in some way linked to this. As you well know, the capacity of our science and technology, biotechnology fields are very strong, and we've had very good results during the pandemic. There are 7 companies producing the injectable biotechnologies, which go from viruses to recombinant technologies, which have the possibility of contributing in some way based on their production, the current production capacities and the traditional business, but altogether offer a capacity of 100,000 liters a month of injectable products. This is crucial and it is important because we are working with these 7 companies, some of which have already signed agreements to develop some of the vaccines that are being marketed in the world, like the Sputnik with the Richmond laboratory, like the AstraZeneca Oxford, which is done here specifically with the active principle, and we ended with an agreement with Mexico as well. But we believe that the effort of the Ministry of Science and Technology and the R plus D plus M and all that is to coordinate the virtual manner of transferring knowledge and scientific technology so that we can decide on a production model giving equal access to all, particularly with a regional vision, so that in some way we can cooperate to offering access to the vaccine for the whole region. Currently, what we're doing to take advantage of the existing capacities, the installed capacity, we've carried out a survey of the productive chain required by the value chain for the development of vaccines. And when I speak of all, I'm talking about from the borax, which is the raw material used to produce the glass, to the type 1 glass for the vials, and the cold chain, the filters, the bags used in the bioprocesses, the preservatives, the coadjuvants, the reagents, productive measures. We've surveyed our complete capacity and the research and development capacity of the critical inputs in the value chain, which today could not be manufactured or produced in Argentina. In light of this, we'll soon be launching a financing plan for the development of vaccines and the value chain with 4 large financing axes. One linked to the development of local vaccines. Argentina today has the development at different phases with 4 vaccines that are fully local with public-private cooperation between the biotechnology companies and some universities or research centers.
The model in this case are loans with contingent reimbursement as the clinical phases progress and non-refundable contributions or grants having to do with research and development. The other line that we have identified because it's necessary to finance is that with soft loans to strengthen companies who are able to receive technologies through transfer contracts. These are loans to grow their capacity or expand their plants. It's very important when countries begin negotiating with the laboratories that will provide the technology to understand that we need greater flexibility from the regulatory offices of some conditions to respect local capacities, of course, but without generating any changes to the safety and security of vaccines. By this, I mean that Argentina has the capacity for pre-filled syringes more than for vials. So when these contracts are signed, it's important to ensure if any of the presentations could, from the outset, be discussed with the laboratory that's transferring the technology. Lastly, we have soft loans to have greater productive capacity, for instance, of vials, syringes, caps, the rubber caps for the vials, and everything else required in the value chain and inputs that are needed to maintain the cold chain. We believe that what has to be done in that case is to provide subsidized loans to those companies that have capacities already but need to expand them. And if new products are to be generated requiring innovation and prior development work, then combine non-reimbursable or non-refundable loans with soft loans, and obviously helping the project to develop these projects that are not yet manufactured in Argentina but are required as inputs, because we want this to be done successfully. For instance, with swabs, Argentina did not have manufacturing of swabs, but the state under the pandemic financed two companies that today are able to generate national swabs for the PCR testing. In order to encourage national investment and to attract foreign investment for biotechnology, and this goes beyond what I've already mentioned in the university and scientific arena, but we also have two very specific fiscal regimes. These are the law of economy of knowledge and the law for biotechnology. They provide interesting benefits for those wishing to invest in these areas. And there are other issues that need to be addressed so that access to technology and vaccines may be made available to every single inhabitant in the territory and in the region. This has to do with understanding that we need coordination and complementarity in investment, regulation, and being able to determine where each of our countries can make a contribution in this supply chain. We need to think about a financing format that is creative. This is an unusual situation that requires solutions that have never before attempted. We believe that for some of the developments needed, we can no longer use the old way of thinking, the old frame of mind. We need a different financing structure, and we need to adapt also, or have the regulatory agencies adapt to the critical situation we're currently faced. Thank you very much, Vice Minister, for this excellent analysis.
The complexity of some of the issues that we've also seen at the global level being discussed also in Argentina, and the advances that are being made there. We are running a little over time, and we do have 3 more interventions, but I know the director also will, Dr. Etienne, will need to be leaving. So I would ask that for the remaining interventions, if we can have interventions in the order of 3 to 4 minutes so that we don't run too much over time. I wanted to take some of what we've heard now from Vice Minister in Argentina and look at the issue of some of the other factors, determinants that are relating to the manufacturing of products. And ask Dr. Nesia Trindade Lima, the president of the Oswaldo Cruz Foundation, from your perspective, other than the issues of looking at the issue of sustainability, and other than the issue of competitiveness, what other factors do we need to ensure that remain present on the agenda to ensure the sustainability of the production of vaccines and other health technologies once this pandemic is over? I'm sorry, if we could have, is Dr. Yeah.
Sorry. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Go ahead, please.
I will speak in Portuguese, my language.
The interpreter apologizes. The sound is very poor. There's too much echo. What I'd like to talk about has to do with sustainability. Very briefly, talking about the perspectives that we are looking at when it comes to science and technology in the realm of health. The interpreter regrets there's so much echo, it's difficult to make out what she is saying. We also want to promote innovation. To think about sustainability, based on the Brazilian experience, it's essential to think about the role played by the universal health system and developing plans for these actions and the promotion of virtuous relationships. So sustainability is a policy having to do with science, technology, and health. And universal systems play an extremely important role as they try to bring together science and technology with the issue of access. Our experience wants us to think about the current emergency due to COVID, while at the same time preparing ourselves for future emergencies. The notion of the platform is truly important to bring these different aspects together. As we heard from the Minister of Chile, and as we've heard by other participants here, there need to be concerted actions between the different players because we want to ramp up production. And today, we are producing, thanks to technology transfers of the AstraZeneca developed by Oxford University. And there's also an agreement with pharmaceutical companies in Brazil. And it is important also to join the regional effort to ensure access for all. In thinking of sustainability, we need to continue with innovation. There need to be resources in order for it all to be feasible. So to work with universities is another strong point. So we are looking at the new technologies as a major challenge for the continent. And we are working together in coordination with Argentina, Mexico, and other countries in order to ensure access to the means. So, a regional effort will be very important in order to take advantage of the strengths of each of our countries.
From your perspective of the bank bill, what are the priority aspects where we need to have greater coordination between the international agencies, including the international financing institutions, for improved collaboration to really optimize what we've heard coming from Chile, Argentina, Brazil, and many others at the meeting, to really increase the regional capacity for production of vaccines?
Gracias, James. Quisiera comenzar agradeciendo.
Thank you, James. I'll start by thanking PAHO for launching this important initiative. And thanks for allowing me to participate in this event. I will now, if you allow me, go to my native language, which is English. I believe that it would be probably easier for the interpreters.
You're asking about the priority aspects for this kind of articulation among international agencies. And I guess I just want to put it in context that the reason this is so important is both because of the complexity of responding to public health emergencies and the complexity of organizing collective regional action. And both of these issues are things that we recognized in the IDB's Vision 2025, where we're looking forward in a sort of medium-term frame for what's going to promote inclusive growth and a sustainable path of recuperation. And for us in the health sector work, it's not just financing healthcare services and supplies, but also looking forward for strategies like promoting equitable digital health solutions, which is one of the excellent examples we have of a close partnership with PAHO, and promoting regional initiatives for greater health technologies development and production in the region. as this initiative is promoting. And I think it helps to look what happened during the early phase of the pandemic to understand how the international collaboration can happen, not just with the support of the international and regional agencies, but what countries do. We saw how a rapid increase in global demand for everything from PPEs to ventilators could lead to massive and inequitable shortages. And we saw how easily supply chains could be disrupted due to the concentrated production of key inputs and also political decisions to reserve domestic production. When we were responding to the pandemic last year, which included a record $21 billion in financing, we were directly experiencing the real supply side constraints that were a limiting factor that year continues to be in many cases. And it sometimes overshadowed the importance of financing. And we also understood early on the need to participate in collective vaccine advance market commitments, which is why we joined PAHO and countries of the region to participate in the COVAX initiative. So it's this kind of joint collaboration between governments and multilateral institutions that helped solve a whole series of administrative obstacles, the sharing of information about supplies, and solving procurement and delivery problems. I think that information sharing part of international collaboration is really critical. We also responded to requests from our member governments to deal with some previously unanticipated issues, such as creating a financial instrument that could help borrowing members buy vaccines with a guarantee to address indemnity obligations, something which really hadn't been on the table before. And the key point here is that many of these problems would not have been there in the first place if production capacities were less concentrated, if they were more diverse, and they were more resilient. So looking forward, what's really necessary is public policies toward medical supplies and inputs that encourage more competition, greater geographical diversity, and less specialized supply chain technologies. Since that time, the IDB has also expanded our support by offering up to $1 billion in financing for COVID-19 vaccines. And to date, we've supported 10 countries with funding for down payments, for vaccine procurement, for distribution. But as you all know, acquiring vaccines has also faced numerous supply constraints, which can't be solved by financing alone, and in fact require the kind of collective regional international action that COVAX, CEPI, WHO, this regional initiative from PAHO, all of these are necessary to carry forward. So to answer your question about the priorities for regional collaboration, to me, the point is the key to building this more competitive, diverse, and resilient supply environment is having firm multilateral commitments through regional and global collaborations that can establish sufficient demand to sustain the web of services and products that we need, whether it's for surveillance, for data processing, for research, for input supplies, for human resources, for trade networks, and for production. And I'm optimistic about this. Our region has a strong history of regional collaboration. It's important to remember we were the first region to eliminate rubella and measles, to eradicate smallpox, to be declared polio-free. The countries of our region achieved these successes by going beyond national programs to collaborate through international agreements and multilateral institutions. And looking at that historical experience, I think the ingredients for success in these regional and global initiatives is, first of all, clear goals. Secondly, commitments to equitable distribution of obligations and benefits. Third, we really need to have inside these agreements appropriate incentives that discourage go-it-alone strategies and instead encourage cooperation. And finally, strong leadership from countries and multilateral institutions is critical to avoid the trap of inertia and put the action on this at the forefront of this international agenda. We've seen efforts like this come out before around influenza vaccine and other kinds of medical supplies. We need to really pick this up and stick with it, and that's going to take strong leadership from countries and multilateral institutions. The IDB is completely 100% behind these regional efforts. We're currently responding, helping Colombia and the Prosur countries requested us to support an initiative to explore technical and governance arrangements to expand vaccine production capacity in the region. We've also got people in our sovereign lending and private sector windows in advanced discussions with some important public-private initiatives to expand production capacity for vaccines, drugs, and other therapies. And it's this kind of regional governance, regional commitment that I think is going to make the big difference along those lines I mentioned. So in closing, I just want to say that by launching this regional platform, POW is really continuing our region's proud history of solidarity and regional cooperation on public health. I think renewing this commitment through regional support for vaccine deployment, maintaining essential health services is essential to any kind of recovery, but new commitments to regional investments in emergency preparedness and production capacity for vaccines and health technologies are really the key to confronting future crises and giving the region a more resilient future. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. And we'll now move to our last panelist, and picking up on some of the points that Bill has made around the importance of the history of collaboration within the region. I'll move now to Alberto Arenas. Alberto Arenas was the director of the Division for Social Development in ECLAC. And looking, Alberto, at the issue of regional integration, we see that we have potential to articulate demand and sustain large-scale productive projects in this region. But in your opinion, what are the main mechanisms and minimum conditions for really effective regional and sub-regional integration in the Americas, overcoming the differences between countries and indeed sub-regions?
Okay, muy buenos días.
Good morning to all of you. And I want to thank PAHO for this invitation to participate in this event, in this launching, and I greet Dr. Carissa Etienne, Director of PAHO in particular, and Dr. Charbas Barbosa, the Assistant Director, and greet the ministers and authorities and colleagues of the region, and Dr. James Fitzgerald, who's chairing the meeting. As the first topic, I'd like to congratulate and welcome this important initiative of PAHO of creating this regional platform to launch for the advancement of the production of vaccines and health technologies. It's a very necessary technology for the region, and I'm sure will have very positive effects. And in that context, from ECLAC, from the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, we've been working with a request for the Latin American and Caribbean states, CELAC, in a project called Comprehensive Health Self-Sufficiency Plan, Strengthening Productive Capacity and Distribution for the countries of CELAC. And I'm sure that we're going to find the necessary coordination and cooperation to find common objectives as this one that PAHO is launching and implementing in the region today. As to your question, James, I'd begin by saying that the pandemic has clearly shown many things, but amongst them the health vulnerability of the region and the enormous public investment in health deficit, which in fact includes production capacity deficit and other health technology deficits. And the second is that in this context, it's also an opportunity for the productive capacity and technological capacities, and the possibility of basically formulating the strategies and policies to strengthen the local manufacturing systems. And thirdly, the medicine production with emphasis on vaccines should imply a systemic approach of the health sector, considering health as a right to the population, as an economic sector, and in general, the different aspects of the investment value, the income, the employment, the knowledge, all of these aspects have to be taken into consideration. And for that, you need a scale large enough for production and maybe share some of the production chains with other countries. So in part, it's regional integration, yes, but not only on the side of the demand, but also the possibility of considering these side of the production and demand and supply. We need sufficient production so that it be sustainable and so that it won't break down once the emergency ends. And the harmonization of this demand is going to go through different factors which are conditioned by the regional integration. And this regional integration is also in turn conditioned by the institutionality, governance, agendas, and why not, the political economy of the region, of course. But I would like to highlight that the articulation of this demand is also necessarily conditioned by the health system, and in particular by the primary health care, and its link with the population and the response to the health problems of the population. For example, the need to contain the pandemic in this case. The reduction of the institutional demand requires systems, especially in primary care, where there are the necessary elements for the distribution, administration, management, and communication. And it requires health systems that strengthen the inclusion of these products in their services. And I don't want to go any further, but I'd like to summarize that we need a health system which has a strong first level, capable of implementing the necessary coverage required by the countries. And it would only be in that way that we could articulate the necessary demand generated by a virtual circle between production or availability, distribution, and actual consumption or use of the vaccines and essential medicines that would, of course, have as the key element contributing to the mobility and mortality of the countries of the region. So the need is to strengthen the health systems with the regional integration to generate the necessary demand to improve the purchasing mechanisms and the sustainable production processes so that we can control a pandemic in the future in this region. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alberto.
Thank you and all the panelists here in this second round. We've really seen the richness of content and discussion and capacity and analysis that exists within this region to address the complexity of the issues around increasing the manufacturing capacity for vaccines, medicines, and other health technologies. And we'll continue this dialogue with you and with all the countries in the region as we move forward in the development of the platform. I would now like to invite Dr. Etienne to present us with some closing remarks to this event. Dr. Etienne?
Thank you, James, and very briefly, ministers, colleagues, and friends, let me take this opportunity to express my heartfelt appreciation and gratitude for your active participation in this meeting. And what a rich engagement it has been. I also anticipate, in anticipation of your engagement in the future activities of this regional platform, I also want to thank you. We have shared amongst us all, the public, private, and civil society, the important advances that have been made in the development of multiple technology platforms for COVID-19 vaccines over what is a relatively short period of time in Latin America and the Caribbean. We have heard of the opportunities and the challenges in technology transfer for the production of complex biologicals and the need for the region to build the necessary infrastructure and technical capacities to break the cycle of dependency on a highly concentrated global vaccine market. I think we all have agreed on this. And we have heard of concrete initiatives, including what is underway with the active intervention of PAHO and WHO to bring mRNA technology to Latin America and the Caribbean. But most of all, I think we have noted the need for coordination, collaboration, investment, and solidarity. I think I've heard it from all of the participants today. And we believe that this will be the essential ingredients for the development and production of new health technologies in Latin America and the Caribbean. This certainly will be the critical determinants through which success will be measured in the future. So let me thank our member states, and in particular our ministers who are present here, for their active participation in this process. We at PAHO and WHO and UN agencies and development partners, we stand ready to work with countries and with the private sector to translate the wish for greater technological autonomy in this region into a reality. As director of PAHO, I pledge to you that I will continue to convene this platform on a regular basis to build solidarity across sectors and between partners, and to ensure that we do have the necessary tools, capacities, and the technology that we need to protect the public health of all across the Americas in the future. And PAHO has been the advocate working on health systems. And we are continuing to strengthen health systems so that when we put all of them together, the people will be the beneficiaries. So thank you very much again for this wonderful discussion, very rich discussion and interventions. Thank you, and we look forward to ensuring that Latin America and the Caribbean can become self-sufficient in health technology. Thank you so much.